are tuned in to the DNVR Rockies podcast brought to you by Bet365. Use code DNVR365 when you sign up. Choose your offer and find out why it is never ordinary with Bet365. Well, speaking of something that's never ordinary, can we talk about the Rockies trade deadline? Because this time of year is never ordinary for the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Rockies, I will start by saying this. They didn't get skunked. They actually made trades, and I know that's something that we were concerned about because on a team that's in how the front office likes to call a reconstruction era, they're in their reconstruction era, you got to be making moves. And the Rockies did, by definition, make moves. So let's get into it. The Rockies made two trades before the trade deadline got underway. They traded off pitcher Jalen Beeks to the Pirates for 23-year-old younger brother of All-Star Freddie Peralta. That was the younger brother. His name is Luis Peralta. So Jalen Beeks goes to the Pirates for Luis Peralta. And then also we had Nick Mears, who went out to the Brewers for pitching prospects Bradley Blaylock and Eugenio Herrera. So the Rockies make two moves during this trade deadline and get three pitching prospects in return for that. So before we get into all of the opinions and reactions to this, because trust me, we're going to spend a lot of this show talking about what your guys' thoughts are, what my thoughts are. Maybe we even go around the office and ask everyone here what their thoughts are. We're going to get a mixed reaction from everyone on how the Rockies handled the trade deadline. And I can say truly that from what I've seen, it is a mixed reaction. There are people who are happy. There are people who are kind of neutral about it. And then there are people who are not too happy about it. But I want to start by actually just getting into the logistics of these moves. So we'll start by the most recent trade, which was the trade of Jalen Beeks to the Pirates for Luis Peralta. So you're parting ways with Jalen Beeks. Jalen Beeks, right-handed pitcher. He's been, kind of just an average arm for the Rockies. I don't have too much to say about Beeks. Not a huge surprise that he is getting shipped away from the Rockies. Luis Peralta, he's more of my focus because he's who you got in return for that. He fits the rebuild phase that the Rockies are in right now. He's a 23-year-old lefty closer. He's got a .91 ERA this season in high A and double A in the Pirates organization. He's pretty hard throwing, which is, good to see, obviously, when you're in a closing role. Not all of us can be Mariano Rivera, who can kind of dice it up without relying solely on the fastball. But one of the things that I think stands out the most to me for Peralta is he's accurate. He's got a 4-to-1 strike-to-ball ratio, which as a closer, usually your typical closer, you see a lot of guys who focus more on their fastball. They've got a 100-mile-an-hour heater, Aroldis Chapman. We hear a lot of conversations about guys like that. Even Victor Vodnik, who's kind of rolled into this closer role for the Rockies this season, or at least he's being kind of shaped to be fitting into that role. But for Luis Peralta, he's very accurate, and especially when you get guys who are coming up from high A, double A, you want to be seeing those fundamentals starting to develop. And that's one of the most important things that I think we're going to see from Luis Peralta. He is a guy who's had some success in his short time in the minors. He's not listed as the top 30 candidate, a top 30 prospect in the Pirates organization, but I think he's right on that cusp, and he's got such high potential that to be honest, I like that move from the Rockies. I like that they bring in a guy who could fit into that middle late reliever / closer role, and he could be someone that we see in September. And for all of the guys that we have seen, maybe Eugenio Herrera is the outlier, but for Blaylock and Peralta, both of these guys are guys that I very much could see coming in at least September, maybe even a late August as a call up to just get an inning or two. And that is the beauty of where the Rockies are at in their season right now. And it's something that I talked about on Monday, that the Rockies are in a place where I don't want to use the word tank because you're not, by definition, tanking. You still want to be developing prospects and getting guys moving forward successfully. And also, you're still building trade value for guys. So, you're not in a place where you are tanking by definition. but you're not as focused on wins and losses as you would be in a year where you are contending for a postseason spot. So I want to see the Rockies really leaning into some of these prospects, some of these guys in the minor leagues that have been making their way up through the ranks over the last couple of years, and then also some of these new prospects who are getting brought in from outside the Rockies organization. I want to see these guys making their mark here in Colorado. And so that's something I want to keep an eye on as we continue through the rest of the season. It's going to be interesting to see who the Rockies start to move around. We're going to see some things, especially in that pitching staff, in the rotation where, you're going to see guys like Ty Block being a perfect example who kind of jumps back and forth between the minors going down for an assignment, then getting called back up, and kind of getting shifted around to see what these prospects look like and how they handle themselves at the major league level. The other thing I mentioned as well on Monday, and I want to re-hit this point, is you're in a position where you have some very low stakes baseball being played from here until the end of September. September 30th, I think is the last game. So bring guys up into your roster now that are going to be able to get their first experience playing Major League Baseball now, when you don't have those high expectations and high stakes. If they go and they throw 2 innings out of the bullpen and they give up 6 runs, you say, okay, you weren't ready. We go bring you back down and we reset. We get you reevaluated and maybe bring you back up later or the next year for spring training. But this is a situation where you're not putting a guy into a game for his first major league debut and he needs to go up and throw 3 scoreless innings against the Los Angeles Dodgers to get you a spot in the postseason. You're putting guys out there that have very low stakes and have a chance to just develop, get some reps up at the big league level. That is what I want to see. So the Rockies are in a prime position right now to do that. And by definition, they fit what they fit the outlook that they have presented for themselves as being a team that is in this reconstruction era by making 2 trades that got you a couple prospects, a couple pitching prospects. And that's kind of my overarching point that I want to make today. And a question I want to ask you guys. I asked it on Twitter. We're going to get into some of the reactions on Twitter and social media later in the show. I do want to open up the Toyota chat as well. At any point in the show, I want to hear your guys' thoughts, what you think the Rockies trade prospects, trade deadline moves, what do you think that did for the team overall? But I asked the question on Twitter, and I want you guys to stew this over as this show continues. But do you think the Rockies made these moves intentionally and played it safe intentionally as part of their game plan? Or do you think they just flat out kind of had some swing and misses? Because I think you could argue both sides. I think you could argue that the Rockies maybe went into this saying, we're going to play it safe. We're only going to make a couple moves, and then we're going to go from there. In the offseason, we're going to, sign some free agents. We're going to do all of that shuffling around as the offseason comes in, but we're going to play it safe during the trade deadline. And I think you could also make the argument that, these guys maybe just didn't get the value that they wanted from the players that they have on your team. I can hint to you where my thoughts go on that, and that is that I think they struck out on some trades. Truly, I can't confirm that officially, but I think you have too much talent on your team that's just sitting there right now that doesn't fit the rebuild that you're in, the reconstruction that you're in. And what are you getting out of them this year? What are you getting out of guys like Cal Quantrill, like Austin Gomber, even like Rymack right now and over the next couple years, when you're not going to be winning games to get you into the postseason? Why not trade them? So I think there was value that was left on the table, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, I want to give a big shout out to our number one sponsor for everything trade deadline, and that is our friends over at Indeed. Indeed sponsors all of our trade deadline talks today, and listeners of this show are going to get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And also, our friends at Indeed, they're not just partnering with us for our trade deadline coverage, though. Indeed is truly one of the best companies that we partner with, no matter what time of year it is. It could be the dead of winter, and Indeed still has you covered. Why? Because when it comes to hiring, no one does it better than them. For so long, I used to use Indeed to apply for jobs, on the application side of things. And, it's really great for that. I've applied for and gotten many jobs just, looking on Indeed to see what job postings were out there for someone like me who was looking to get a job. But I think one of the really important parts that is overlooked about Indeed is that they do so much on the opposite side of that as well, getting businesses connected with actual candidates that are appropriate and good fits for companies. And Indeed uses so many different algorithms and so much data to be able to match you as the business with candidates that can be a good match for your company. 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. And they use a matching engine, like I just said, that helps you find candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed and for scheduling, screening, messaging, so you can connect with candidates faster. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to any other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And as we mentioned just a few moments ago, listeners of this show are going to be getting $75 in sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now to support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Well, also, this is a perfect time of the year to get out and travel. Get out of Denver for a little bit. I know trade deadline stuff is a little frustrating. People are getting tired of the smoke that we've got outside. And you just want to get out for a little bit. Well, there's no better place to go than over to our friends out in Vegas. That's Circa Resorts and Casino. Check out the Circa's Stadium Swim to watch the best sports action during the summer. There are some incredible sporting games going on all summer long. Especially, we've got the Olympics coverage. We've got Rockies games continuing. We've even got the Broncos that are getting ready in training camp, although I don't know how much Broncos coverage you're going to see out there in Vegas. But everything else you want to watch, that's out there at Circa Stadium Swim. They've got so many cool options for you. It's Vegas's first ever adults-only casino resort, so it saves you time. You don't have to be checking IDs all the time. There are only people 21 years old or over hanging out there at Circa Sports Resort and Casino. It's the world's largest sports book as well. They've got 3-story stadium-style seating, tons of VIP room, dugout club, Legends Club, Champions Club, all of the good stuff. 7,000 square foot casino with 2 levels, over 1,300 slots, 48 table games with dancing dealers. It all sounds like such a blast. And there are so many other things that we could just go down the list of here for Circa Sports Resort and Casino. But it's not just fun to get outside. You've got cool rooms. You've got over 500 rooms with a variety of layouts to fit your needs. Art from local artists. I know I love all the good art when you get out into Vegas. So elevate your evening at the Legacy Club and just really get a full-on resort experience out there at Circa Resort and Casino. Experience Stadium Swim and watch your favorite teams, all with our friends at Circa Resort and Casino. All right, so we know about the trades that took place for the Colorado Rockies, but I wanted to ask what your guys' thoughts are on these trades, because it's not just about what I think, and I was talking to a friend about this, the other day, and I'm saying, hey, look, it's the trade deadline's not just about the players and the coaches and the managers. It's about the fans, because this is what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years. This impacts our viewing of the Colorado Rockies from now and beyond. And so what we get out of this trade deadline is just as important as what the Rockies are getting out of this trade deadline. I think that's why there's so many mixed emotions about, what the Rockies did and how the fans are receiving that. And I know there's a lot of frustration out there right now. I know Burge 7F91 is a little frustrated about the way that, Bill Schmidt's approaching this deadline, saying the lack of moves is a perfect example of terrible management. I get that. And I hear a lot of that right now. But I want to play devil's advocate initially by just saying, what if this is them sticking to the game plan? I mean, what if this is what the Colorado Rockies were expecting from the get-go? They were saying, we're going to play it safe. We want to take our time. We want to build some talent, through the rest of the season and the off season. And we don't want to lose some of the guys that we have. Now, I understand the frustrations with this. And like I said, that's me playing devil's advocate because I think I lean a little bit more towards the frustrated fans, because I think you just left too much value on the table. You're in a place where you are selling as a team, and you just left too much to be desired. I want to ask about grading because I'm going to get into some of the specifics here in a moment, but I asked on Twitter, how would you grade the trade deadline overall for the Rockies? And I think we got a lot of overreactions a little bit, but understandably so. But I'm going to say I would grade this trade deadline overall a C. And the reason I give the Rockies a C is because I feel like the Rockies, like I said, they made good moves, or at least decent moves, for what they did do. You lost Nick Mears and Jalen Beeks, and you got 3 pitching prospects, guys that have some high upside. I'm okay with losing, guys today. That's part of being in a selling mode for a team. You're just in a place where you've got to get worse right now to be able to get better in the long term. So the Rockies are going to sacrifice guys like Nick Mears and Jalen Beeks, who are current pitchers on their roster right now that are having value and output currently, to go and get guys that, there's no guarantee on, but the potential upside is what you're betting on. But I think if you're going to play it safe, you've got to make a bunch of moves. You've got to do more, right? The Rockies made 2 mediocre moves, maybe a little bit, maybe par moves. They shot par on their 2 trades. But if you're going to do that, you've got to do it on pretty much every single trade, and you've got to do a bunch of that, right? You're not going to be trading Rymack. You're not going to be trading some big name players that are going to get you the value that you need to make a playoff run in 2026. So to balance that out, you've got to go out and stack up the prospects. So I want to go over hits and misses here. Okay. Was it a hit or a miss to get rid of Nick Mears? I think that's a hit. Like I said, you're betting on long-term value. Okay. Nick Mears is not a guy that you're building your entire roster around. He's not a guy in the bullpen that's being consistent enough to, or even starting, is consistent enough to be able to say, I want to hold on to that guy because that guy is someone that is going to fit our rebuild. So I think that's a hit. You hit by getting rid of Nick Mears just on the trade deadline. Jalen Beeks, same thing. Okay. He's a guy that you weren't holding on to for dear life, and you got some good return by Luis Peralta. Now, these are hypotheticals. This is what we were talking about before this show started about, these are guys that we expected to see going off the trade block. But is it a hit or miss by keeping both your catchers, Diaz and Stallings? And I think that's a miss. I think the Rockies needed to trade at least one, if not both, of their catchers right now for many reasons. One, you've got a great catcher right now, farm system, in Drew Romo, who has been putting up killer numbers. He is the future catcher for the Colorado Rockies. Okay, and he fits the rebuild. He fits that era that you're in as a team. Diaz and Stallings don't. You got 2 veteran catchers, one that's been iffy with some injuries in Diaz. Stallings, who's just been a guy that's been a veteran. He's been pretty consistent. He's had some ups and downs, but they don't fit your rebuilding era, your reconstructing era. So get rid of them. Use the value, albeit limited value, but use the value that you can get from them right now to go and pick up some prospects. specifically pitching prospects, because you've got a guy like Drew Romo who fits the phase that you're in as a team, and you've got him that you're probably going to see him coming up to the majors some point this season anyways. He's been putting up killer numbers, in Albuquerque. So what are you doing? Why are you not getting rid of Diaz and Stallings? Did you try to get rid of Diaz and Stallings and you just couldn't get enough value for them or the value that you wanted? And to be honest, I don't care if you didn't get the deal that you wanted. At this point, just go get arms. Diaz and Stallings aren't doing you any good being on the team because you're not making it to the playoffs this year, and you're not making it to the playoffs probably next year. And you can argue as the front office like, hey, we're reconstructing, we're not rebuilding. No, that's bullshit. You're rebuilding. That's where you are right now. So get rid of guys like Diaz and Stallings who don't fit that. So that's a miss. I would have taken one or the other or both, but you didn't get either. So that's a miss. Drew Romo is going to now have to fit in with Elias Diaz, who's been hurt. His output hasn't been there. He's getting older. Same thing with Stallings. What are we doing? Quantrill, hit or miss. Not getting rid of Cal Quantrill. A miss. Dude has the most value that you're probably going to get out of him right now. And here's how I want to look at Cal Quantrill. In 2 years, the Rockies said that they're hoping and expecting to be making a run at the postseason in 2 years, in 2026. Is Cal Quantrill going to have the same value for your Rockies squad as a starter or even out of the bullpen as he has right now? Yes or no? I can tell you the answer is no. I mean, I'm open to be surprised. I'm open for him to come out and say, hey, I've gotten better over the next 2 years for the Rockies. And he's been pitching pretty good. But I don't think he has the longevity or the consistency to raise in the ranks over the next 2 years for the Rockies to the point where when they could potentially be contenders, is he going to be the guy that you have him at today? And when you do get to 2026 and you say, all right, we're panicking a little bit. We're the Seattle Mariners right now. We're panicking. We've got half of a good team and we're contenders, but we need a couple more pieces. Is he going to have enough value to get you an emergency trade last minute to come bring some other reliever in that's going to show up today and pitch? Is he going to be that guy? No. I don't think he will. So Cal Quantrill was a miss. You kept him on your team. You are leaving value on the table. Austin Gomber. I'm going to just go back 30 seconds and rewatch what I said about Cal Quantrill. Same thing about Gomber. Okay? You're missing on him. Rymack. Burge talked about why wouldn't you trade Rymack as well. I talked about this a week ago, said the same thing. Why aren't we trading Rymack? Producer Kale and I were talking about this before the show, saying that Rymack, he asked to stay in Denver. I get it. He's got family here. He's a homegrown kid. Kale, and I know your opinions on it were that it's like, you just, when you're a player like Rymack who's kind of come up through the ranks in Colorado, it's nice to be stable in Colorado. And I know that plays into it, but I don't know. I just feel like there's a little, like you're in this phase where like you got to make, if you're not going to make a bunch of little moves, you got to make a big move. Is that enough of a reason to keep Rymack on your team?
So Rymack is tricky because the timeline is, we were talking about this earlier, but he's 29. So like there's a world where he's part of that team in 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Right? Total, and he's under contract for that. So from
a good contract too.
A good contract. Not a ton of money compared to his production.
Sure.
So I get that perspective, management going like, why would we get rid of one of our best assets if we want to compete that's under contract for what we see our timeline as? But is he the type of move you have to make in order to actually be in that window in 2 to 3 years? because you're probably going to get a top 25 prospect for Rymack.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
That's what I mean. So like what in someone's system, right?
Yeah.
So
or 5, top 50 prospects.
Right. Totally. So like, is that the type of move you need to make to really put yourself into that window? But I do understand from a management perspective, Rymack for me is a little bit trickier because theoretically, if he doesn't fall off, that production is going to be useful to you in a couple of years. And he's on a good contract. And obviously he's beloved in the city. Management loves him. All that type of stuff comes into it.
He's your future Charlie Blackmon.
Totally.
I mean,
he's just been here for forever and all that. But I also totally get your perspective that it's probably bad business to not trade him.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have to do one or the other. And this circles back to the point I made earlier in the show about if you're going to make some small moves, you got to make a bunch of them. Okay? I understand not trading Rymack, but then go out and make 5 different trades for a bunch of prospects and boost your farm system. Not just 3 guys, but 5, 6, 7 guys. I mean, let me look at this. The Marlins got 13 players. They traded for 13 guys. The Marlins suck. And they got 13 players, 11 prospects, 2 players. 2 current players that are going to be on their team now. So for me, I understand not getting rid of Rymack. He is your veteran, one of your veterans, or will be one of your veterans that brings up a lot of this new talent. But then you've got to approach it differently at the trade deadline to be able to balance that out. And if you're only going to make 2 kind of minor trades that we really didn't even see coming, Jalen Beeks, he was on our list, but Nick Mears was kind of whoa, we didn't really see that one coming around left field. But then go out and trade Rymack and get 5 prospects out of that, or 2 really good prospects. Get the value from somewhere. The Rockies are not good enough right now to be able to only go get 3 average prospects at the trade deadline and say, this is going to be the future of our team.
I mean, but that's the Rockies, right? Problematic. But they don't function like a normal baseball organization. They never have. For them, status quo is good. And that's not how baseball works, but that's how the Rockies work.
And I'm new to that because the Rockies are my adopted team. I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in Seattle, and I actually am not Seattle was my team that I rooted for because I lived there. But my family is a diehard Giants fan. So I grew up though watching Seattle Mariners baseball, and it was the same thing where you had King Felix Hernandez on your team for a while. You had Ichiro, Adrian Beltre when I was first living in Seattle. The Mariners had some good pieces, but their front office wasn't willing to embrace the rebuild, and it took them 20 years, give or take, 21 years, to even get into a play-in game after that 2001 crazy season. And I'm worried that the Rockies are in that phase right now where you're just are we not doing enough? We're not doing enough. And one day you're going to wake up and say, God, you're like the Broncos. It's been 20 years and we're still trying to figure out what our direction is. And it's why I have such a hard time with the front office saying, we're not rebuilding, we're reconstructing. Because no, you're rebuilding, or you should be rebuilding. You're not reconstructing, because if you were the Mariners, going back to the Mariners, they're reconstructing right now. They have a phenomenal pitching staff, best pitchers in baseball on the Mariners team, and they have the worst hitters in baseball. And so they're in a playoff window. I mean, they're right there neck and neck with the Astros, but they have to go make moves currently to get some talent now on the team, which we saw they did on the trade deadline, so that they can actually make the playoffs. They are reconstructing. They're not rebuilding, they're reconstructing. The Rockies are rebuilding. You are not making it to the playoffs last year, this year, next year, or even probably the year after that. So if you're not going to go trade for Rymack, and you're not going to go get 5 prospects or 2 really good prospects for someone like Rymack, then you've got to go make a bunch of small moves. They didn't do that. So keeping Rymack on the team, I think that's a miss. But I think that's a soft miss, because maybe that was a foul tip into the glove type of miss, because I see where you're going with that. Like, I get keeping Rymack, and I also love having Rymack on the team. Like, I know I'm kind of going a little Debbie Downer on this, but like, I love the guy. I love watching him play, and I love that we get to have him on our team. He was our lone all-star this year. Like, he's a blast to watch, and it's fun that we have him in Colorado. And there is value to having guys. On my first show, I talked about that with Todd Helton, having a guy that spent his entire career in Colorado. And maybe that's just what the Rockies are trying to do with Rymack. Maybe they don't want to have another Nolan Arenado situation or a Trevor Story situation where you trade off your best Colorado-born guy and the fan base hates you for it. But I actually think in this case, although we would be very bummed to lose Rymack, if you got good return for it, I think the fans would be kind of happy. I think at least they'd understand, right? Like, do anything. So I think that's kind of a miss, with Rymack. But that was the rundown on kind of who we were looking at could be traded, who was traded, what were those hits and misses. Like I said, I gave him a C because I think the Rockies did kind of stick to the plan. They got a couple prospects for a couple, low-level pitchers and played it safe, but got to take risks. So I can't really feel comfortable going anything above a C. But hey, look, the Rockies, they've got a lot of season left to develop some of these prospects and bring them up, maybe give them some time up at the ballpark. And speaking of the ballpark, we've got a lot of games left this year. It's weird to think that the All-Star game just finished 2 weeks ago, and the trade deadline is just wrapping up. And this is the perfect time of year to go out to the ballpark. It's low stress. You get to go out to Coors Field, watch some just casual baseball, and enjoy your final few summer days out at the stadium. And hey, if you're going to be going out to Coors Field, though, to watch some baseball, you got to take advantage of the best deals on the market with our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down, which is insane because Rockies tickets are so cheap to begin with. But with Game Time, they're even cheaper as you get closer to first pitch. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, you can actually open up the Game Time app and see where you're sitting and what the view from your seat is. Although Coors Field, go sit anywhere. It's amazing. It's beautiful views. They've got their lowest ticket price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. So really, if you want to get out to Coors Field, I cannot stress to you enough how important it is for you to use Game Time. It is just so easy. I remember in high school, with my buddies, we'd get out of school and we'd be like, hey, last second, you guys want to go watch a baseball game? And we would just jump on the light rail and go hop 15 minutes down the tracks and go over to, it was Safeco Field at the time, and go watch some Mariners baseball. And it would have been so much easier if I had Game Time, because we all could have just connected and, got some super cheap, probably $5 tickets on Game Time, and got to go watch some cheap baseball. And that is what is going to be at Coors Field the rest of this year. Just some good, fun, relaxing, cheap baseball. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Well, also, when you're out there at Coors Field, you've got to check out the rooftop bar. And I say this every single show because they have the best beer in the world. Coors Light. It's hot. It's 150 degrees out there at Coors Field. There's smoke everywhere. You're stressed about how many people are around you, because it's whether the Rockies are winning and losing, it's always packed up there. But then you realize, hey, I've still got 15 minutes to first pitch. I'm going to go get some $3 Coors Light up at the rooftop bar and chill out with a cold, refreshing Coors beer. There is nothing better than a Coors Light to kind of cool down and refresh yourself as you get ready to go watch 9 innings of Rockies baseball. There are plenty of chances in life to make things better by choosing chill, and Coors Light is the best choice when you are wanting to relax and cool down. So when you embrace that chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a cold, refreshing Coors Light. Make the most of the times you choose to chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in our own Golden, Colorado. I wanted to transition here because I wanted to look into what other teams that are struggling, we'll put it this year, are doing. Okay, it's important to be transparent when you're in a phase where you're not where you want to be as a team and you want to get better. And so right now, the Rockies are unfortunately not where any of us want them to be. They're on pace for another 100-loss season, and the prospect of being in the postseason, a wild card, or even miraculously winning the NL West, the hardest division in all of baseball, it seems a long way out. So it's good to take a step back sometimes and look at, okay, where are we at in comparison to some of our other teams that are kind of in the same spot that we're in? So like the White Sox, the Marlins, the A's, the Blue Jays, the Angels, even the Cubs. What are these teams doing during the trade deadline? And so last night I was going down the rabbit hole and decided I wanted to kind of look at some of the other trades that these other teams were making and how that all lined up in comparison to the Rockies. So let's start with the White Sox first. The White Sox had that wild 3-team trade with the Dodgers and the Cardinals. They had 8 players, could be more technically once those terms are hashed out. And those players were jumping around. The White Sox ended up receiving 3 prospects out of that. They also traded a couple more players currently on their team for prospects. All in all, the Rockies made 3 trades and they got 5 prospects out of that, okay? The Marlins got 5 trades. I think it was 5 trades. They got 11 prospects and 2 players, 13 players overall. The A's made 3 trades. They got 6 prospects overall. The Blue Jays made 4 trades. They got 6 prospects. The Angels made a couple trades, but it didn't really amount to anything. The Rockies made 2 trades for 3 prospects. Now, I get that the trade deadline isn't just the value that we're talking about on these teams' trade deadlines isn't just calculated based on how much sheer volume, the amount of trades that we make, right? You know, just because the Marlins went and traded 5 times, and got 13 players doesn't necessarily mean they got better. But the reason I wanted to look at that is because I think the Rockies are in a place where, like I said, you either have to make one of 2 decisions right now. You either need to make a blockbuster trade where you go and trade a guy like Rymack and get a lot of value out of him, and you get maybe 5 prospects or 2 really good prospects, whatever that looks like. Or you got to go make a bunch of little trades and you build your farm system around those little trades. The Rockies, out of all of these teams, only made 2 trades, and they only got 3 prospects out of that. So you look at a team like the Marlins, or even the White Sox, who are the worst team in the history of baseball, basically. I mean, you've got 5 prospects, and you just made moves. And I think that's why people get so frustrated with the Rockies, is it feels like they just aren't moving enough. I know it's really hard to be patient. You know, I mean, take the Broncos, for example. Like, you know, Broncos fans, like, we expect the Broncos to be in the playoffs every single year, right? And so it's really hard when you sit there and say, yeah, it's been 10, 15, 20 years since the Broncos have been a true, like, Super Bowl contender. And I get that there are times where you just, as a fan base, kind of have to accept it and be patient. I mean, look at the Avalanche. Like, there were some dog days for the Avalanche over the past 10 years. And then, you know, the patience played out. It worked out in our favor because, you know, Sakic went out and made some phenomenal moves. They stuck with their plan, and the Avs became Stanley Cup contenders and then ended up winning the Stanley Cup and are still in that window right now with some of the best players in all of hockey. But the thing that the Avs did when they were in those positions was they made moves. They were bringing in talent. They were signing talent that you know, was already established. You've got guys like McKinnon, Makar, Nichushkin, Rantanen, You know, I mean, the Avs were active through their rebuild. Okay, you look at the Rangers or the Diamondbacks even. The Diamondbacks were not a good team. The Rangers were not a good team over the past 10 years. And then all of a sudden they start moving some pieces around and you get some really young guys coming through their farm system, and there you go. You're in the World Series. You're winning a World Series. The Rockies are not that far out. I know it feels like it because their record shows that they are, but baseball is a fickle sport. And you see teams like the Rangers and the Diamondbacks, you know, who turn it around in 2 or 3 years because they have a good farm system. Hell, even the Orioles and the Pirates. Look at what the Pirates are doing right now with Paul Skeens. He's one guy, and he has turned their winning percentage around immensely. The Rockies aren't that far away, but you've got to make moves, and you've got to do something. And you have good talent in your farm system, but you cannot be stationary. And so the reason I go out and compare all these other teams that are in similar position to the Rockies is because it felt like other teams, whether they were the right moves or the wrong moves, were making moves. The Rockies only made 2. And they only got 3 prospects. So that's where I have a hard time with the Rockies, is just like, you got to do something that makes a little bit more of a splash, right? And that's where I think some of the frustrations for the fans is they feel like the Rockies front office doesn't have the same mindset that the fans have on, like, we've got to be moving forward quickly. Even if it takes us 3 years, still quickly. And look, I'm not a GM. I can't pretend to know what it's like to run a Major League Baseball team. And I know that I'm sure Bill Schmidt and, you know, the front office goes and watches our show and also sees people's tweets and listens to other radio stations and hears all the commentary around sports and says, and laughs and says, hey, if only you knew how hard it was. Sure, whatever. But it's your job. You're making a lot of money. So, like, I can't, you know, lean too much into that excuse. You've got to make moves. You can't just sit around, right? And also you got to be aware, if you do sit around, you're going to piss a lot of people off in the fan base. And I think that's where the Rockies fans are at right now. So the Rockies, there's going to be some mixed emotions. And I think if you look into where they're going to be at next year in the trade deadline, this just puts even more pressure on you. And it puts a lot of pressure on you in the offseason as well. You had an opportunity to get value for guys that are currently on your team that would have, I don't know, given you a little bit of time, bought you some leeway with the fan base to say, all right, we might not be where we want to be, but we're making adjustments like we did last year at the trade deadline, by the way. I will give them credit for that. So in a moment, I want to actually get to some of the reactions, the actual reactions from around Rockies world, because I think that's important. I think it's important to hear from the fans and to hear what you guys think and to hear what the tone is, what the vibe is around the Rockies fan base right now. And spoiler alert, it's not great, but I think it's good. You know, we got to vent. We got to get our frustrations out and then move forward, because that's all we can do. You know, the Rockies are still going to continue to hopefully grow as a team, and we're here to make the most out of the ride as we go. And I want to talk about making the most of your time out at the ballpark, because truly one of the best ways to make the most of going out to the ballpark, or really anything you do outside nowadays, is by getting some good sunflower seeds. Because what's the best way to pair time outdoors with some good food and some good flavor? It's with sunflower seeds. There's no better experience than spending time out at the ballpark. You get a good cup with you, and you're enjoying a good mouthful of seeds. And the best place to get those sunflower seeds is with our friends at Chinook Seedery. I talk so much about how annoying it is to get that, like, really kind of gross aftertaste, though, when you're someone who spent your entire life around a baseball field. I have spent my entire life chewing on sunflower seeds, and there is nothing worse than that sandpapery, kind of chalky texture, that salty burn that you get in your mouth after chewing traditional seeds. But with Chinook Seedery, they have spent a lot of time perfecting their ingredients and their recipes so that they can avoid any of that bad leftover taste in your mouth. They don't leave any of that sandpaper tongue, that salt burn. You can eat their seeds all day long and you will have no issues. You could go probably drink some wine, go to a wine tasting event after eating some Chinook seeds, and you'd be just as good as some of the other sommeliers out there. Maybe that's getting a little ahead of myself, but it feels like that. I mean, it cleanses the palate, and that is why they are truly unique and one of a kind. They've also got some unique one of a kind flavors that you can't find anywhere else. Original, we've got to keep with the basics: lemon pepper, jalapeno ranch, Parmesan and pepper, cinnamon toast, dill pickle, hatch green chili, and smokehouse barbecue. Get a sampler pack to try all 8 of those flavors. It's like those jelly beans that you tried as a kid where you were like guessing what jelly beans you were going to have. Like that's how I feel when I get the sampler pack, because you never know what you're going to get. Are you going to get some cinnamon, or are you going to get dill pickle? Like, that's a wide variety of flavors.
Let's just hope they're not putting them all in the same pack. I don't want to. I'm not trying to mix some dill pickle and cinnamon sugar all in one cheekful. That's for sure.
I mean, see,
would be unique.
The cool thing about the Chinook, Seedery flavors is that those are all good flavors. You try those like jelly bean things. Sometimes you get like rotten egg and stuff like that.
Oh
like
yeah, those
the
are
vomit flavors.
Yeah, those were bad.
So you could do the sampler pack and everything's good. You can rest assured that every single seed you put into your mouth is going to taste phenomenal. And so try out some of their flavors. They're the largest seed on the market. Head over to ChinookSeedery.com. Use code Rockies for 20% off your order. They are the best seeds ever. Speaking of best things ever, got to talk about my own vehicle and a family vehicle of mine. That is the official vehicle of DNVR, Toyota. They're also the official vehicle of the Colorado Rockies, by the way. So they've got their hands in all the different baskets. Toyota is not just our official vehicle, they are the official best vehicle that you could possibly own. I myself own an older Toyota Highlander that has over 200,000 miles and is still crushing it. I could put that up against any vehicle on the market in that same year, and I would be very confident in my Toyota's ability to get the job done. I know my mom also has a new Toyota Tacoma. That is one of their new lines that they have just been crushing it on. You can get the 2024 Toyota Tacoma as one of those iconic cars, iconic trucks. And I know my mom has loved it. She got a little bit of a lift on it, the blacked out windows. I mean, it's pretty funny to see how she rocks that truck, but she makes it work because it's a Toyota Tacoma. I mean, like anyone can make that work. And it is just a blast to drive in. I know when I learned to drive, I got to learn how to drive on an older Toyota Tacoma, and it's never been the same. I drive some of my other friends' trucks every once in a while, and it is just not the same. The Tacoma, the 4Runner, the iconic 2024 Land Cruiser. If you want to get outside, and why would you live in Colorado if you weren't going to get outside? You got to have a Toyota. They are such a impressive lineup of vehicles. They've got 16 different hybrids as well. Their SUVs can help you if you've got a big family and you're moving out to college, all the good stuff. The RAV4, Highlander, it's just a great lineup over at Toyota. So be sure to visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR and the Rockies. All right, let's wrap up this show here with some tweets. I told you I wanted to be getting to some of your guys' comments. Kale's going to be just throwing up some of these tweets. And this is just some of the stuff that you guys have said to us, and I wanted to hear your guys' reaction. So, Kale, let's rock with it. Let's just go down the list. Luke Hall. Luke has been making some really good tweets. He said, Rockies trade deadline thoughts could be they just can't find takers for Diaz and Stallings. I agree with you, Luke. They could have, and I said that earlier in the show, they could have just not gotten the return that they wanted for Diaz and Stallings. I just don't like that they didn't trade either of them. He did say that, it's hard to trade bad or mediocre players. Yes and no. I think putting a guy like Diaz as your backup catcher on a contending team right now, a team that has a good starting catcher, but being able to bring Diaz in as a solid backup catcher, you can't go wrong with that. And I'm not expecting to get huge prospects out of that, but I feel like you're in a pretty good spot. I definitely think they could have gotten at least a couple pitching prospects out of someone like Diaz and Stallings, or even both. But I'm surprised they didn't trade either of them. So, Luke, appreciate it. Thanks for the comment. What do we got next? Trenton Bless, another good, commenter. I imagine the market for catchers was cold. We're seeing a recurring theme about catchers, and I think that's one of the biggest disappointments because I feel like we all just expected to see at least one of the catchers get dealt off. So I agree that there might have been a cold market for catchers, but still, I'm going to say what I said with Luke. Got to get rid of one of them, even if you don't get very much for him. And Cal staying is because he can consistently pitch well at Coors. I disagree. I see where you're coming from, but I don't care if he can consistently pitch well at Coors now. Can he consistently pitch well at Coors in 2026, 27, 28 when the Rockies are making a move, run for the playoffs? Like, I don't want guys that can consistently pitch well at Coors today. I want guys that can consistently pitch well at Coors 3 years from now. Get rid of Cal. I love the guy. He was fun to watch. His trash talk is immaculate. But I don't need him on my team right now. He's got value. He's one of the few players that does have good value for the Rockies. I would have liked to see him gone. What do we got next? Tried dealing Diaz and Stallings, but the market just wasn't there for either, especially Diaz. So Nick Berkland, keeping with the theme about, saying the market might not have been there for either. His injuries scared teams away. Now, that's a good point. That might have been true. But still, I think a consistent Diaz is a good backup on a contending team. Again, with Quantrill being not traded, being a shocker, there was a market for him. I agree. Yeah, that's good. Good comments there. We're continuing to see a trend about people being confused, really, about these moves. Colby Treat says he does think they tried. The catchers he hoped would have been traded, but they would have gotten little to no value. I disagree. I think they could have gotten little value, but enough. I also think they're more than likely overvalued Quantrill or even Rogers. Rogers was an interesting one because I'm also kind of surprised they decided to keep Rogers because I just don't see him fitting. Not that he's a bad player or a player that has a lot of value, but I just don't see him fitting into the, this rebuild that they're in right now. But
that's the problem with both those players is they don't really fit the timeline.
Yeah.
So even if they're good and you're able to re-sign them or whatever you want to do with them, like
what are you going to do with Brendan Rodgers in 2 years?
Exactly. So there might not be the value they wanted for either of those players, but some value is better than none.
Yeah.
And neither of them fit the timeline.
This is a time where I'm actually okay with the Rockies not getting what they wanted exactly out of players and still making moves. Now, obviously don't go tank a trade, but if you don't get the 100% value you wanted out of a guy, you're not really in a place to be super picky. You just need dudes. You need depth in your farm system. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I just feel like, you've got to make those moves now to get that value later. So, yeah, thanks for the comment. Dodgers made an entire roster worth of trades. Nuggets, Brockylanch? Yes, they did. The Dodgers, I wanted to say, as a joke, oh, cool, the Dodgers just signed another guy that is going to show up and be one of the best guys who would have been on any other team. The Dodgers just suck because they're so good and they have so much talent and they have pieces that they can move. They can go trade some middle reliever and get a stud for him. What the hell? I don't even want to talk about the Dodgers, but yeah, the Dodgers made good moves. They won the trade deadline. Major League Puns says they think they planned to move a catcher, really needed in order to open up the spot for Drew Romo. Yes, I agree with that first part. You got to move pieces around to get Drew Romo there. We're all expecting Drew Romo to make his major league debut at some point in the remainder of the season. So I'm surprised that they didn't open up a spot for him, especially with Diaz and his injuries. Gomber really faded, so you would be selling low, and Quantrill is exactly what they are trying to develop. I disagree with that, but I think where people get tripped up with Quantrill is he's one of the few guys that's really fun to watch on the Rockies right now, and I get that. And you've got to have guys like that make sell tickets and bring people out to the ballpark, but Quantrill's fun to watch now, but I go back to that whole point of is he going to be fun to watch in 3 years? Maybe. I mean, maybe. Prove me wrong. I just don't know. I don't have the confidence in that.
It's one more year of control, and I just have very little confidence in them being able to re-sign him, even if he does. Say, he's just going to be too expensive, and he doesn't want to pitch at Coors because nobody wants to pitch at Coors.
Exactly. And so, and I think we saw, what happened at that whole little scuffle with the Red Sox, and people kind of remembered ooh, Quantrill's good, he's fun to watch. But I think I would have stayed the course if I was the Rockies and tried to get some value out of him, because whether he became a flashy star for the Rockies in the last couple weeks, he still doesn't quite fit that rebuild to me. So yeah, Quantrill is just kind of, I think, a missed opportunity for the Rockies. Got a couple more here. Jackson Esplin. I will wait to hear Schmidt's justification, but I think I speak for most when I say I'm extremely confused and deflated. Confused and deflated. That is the trend for Rockies fans right now. And I think, Jackson, you encapsulated the feeling, the vibe of Rockies fans right now. Confused and deflated. I don't necessarily think the Rockies bombed this trade deadline. I gave them a C. They made a couple decent trades. There were some overreactions on the fan side for sure. People saying, oh, this is an F. They sucked. They didn't do enough. Yes, they didn't do enough. But they did something. But it wasn't really what we expected. All the players that we really expected. I mean, I was texting Noah with Blake Street Banner, and he was on the show on Monday, and he and I were going back and forth about it, and just kind of what are they doing? I understand maybe they weren't going to make all the trades that we thought. I mean, hey, we're just guessing here, but they were pretty educated guesses, and you didn't really do any of them. So confused is the word that I would have kind of gone with more. And I think deflated encapsulates a lot of Rockies fans as well. Just not really where the team really wanted to be. And I think it's just tough for Rockies fans. So, yeah. Mark, I don't know how many more we have, but Mark says A on the trades they made, F on the trades they didn't make. Solid C overall. Mark, you and I are on the exact same page. Mark is speaking my language. Yeah, so Punk Rockies, the deals they made were great, but the deals they didn't will forever leave a bitter taste in my mouth. Okay, so we're good. We're all starting to level up here. We're lining up. It's that whole idea of what if? I hate being that guy. What if? What if the Rockies did that? But I think that's where we're at. What if the Rockies made a trade for Rymack? What if the Rockies got rid of Quantrill and Gomber? And what if? So, yeah, a couple more. D for disappointment. I get that. No disagreement there. F plus for Rhino. Total incompetence, not trading away one of the catchers. That is all you had to do. I wouldn't give him an F plus. Is that even a thing? Can you get an F plus? I feel like when you get an F, it's just an F. Is that a grade in school? I don't think it is.
I never got an F, so okay. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never got an F either, but
I did get a D plus once.
See,
so
D plus,
a D plus, that's a thing.
F plus for all the teachers out there. Is that even really a thing? But I like the positive spin on it. I mean, he didn't give him an F minus. Could have been worse, I guess. But yeah, that's a tough one. But I think this is the last one. Kale, is that correct? All right, Jackson with the twofer. I think they tried for the catchers and there was no interest and or doubt about Diaz's health. But for Cal, I don't think they tried or ever intended to deal him, which was in character for them. Agreed. I doubt there was any interest for others. Gomber, Rogers, Kinley, Cave. I don't think they were going to trade Kinley or Cave. I don't think there'd be very much interest for Kinley or Cave. But yeah, I mean, it seems like everyone's pretty much in line with where we are on this. So yeah, I'm sorry to the Rockies fans who are upset. I'm glad we were able to talk through it today. But we're going to keep you guys posted on any other moves, although they will not be trade deadline related. But, now we're in a place where the Rockies, we're going to start having discussions on who they're going to be signing as free agents in the offseason, where they're at. The Rockies did lose to the Angels last night to wrap things up real quick, 10-7. The Angels, probably the only team that did worse, at least on a grading standpoint, than the Rockies at the trade deadline, and the Rockies lost to them last night. So the Rockies play the Angels again today, a late game. I think it's past like 8 o'clock tonight. So if you're staying up late, we'll be watching that game. But as always, I appreciate all of the comments. We're going to be talking to you guys on social media. You can follow us at DNVR_Rockies, and you can follow myself at CJJ Saez. Kale, what you got on the socials?
I'm getting off Twitter, so follow me on Instagram, Blue Eyes with a Backpack.
There you go. All the good stuff on the socials. Thanks so much for tuning in with us. This has been Rockies trade deadline coverage, sponsored by Indeed. I am Christian Saez with super producer Kale and our entire team at DNVR. We'll see you next time.
We all silly like the mayor.